Let me begin by saying that I have a sense of how hard it is for you to do this. Because, as many of you know, when you have a tragic loss, no matter how long ago it was, and it wasn't very long ago in your case, when you bring it up, everything comes back. You relive it. You relive it, that moment. And I admire your courage. I wish I had had the courage you had years ago when my wife and daughter were killed. Not by a gun, by a tractor trailer. Folks, I want to thank the mayor for the passport into town, as well as for his support. He's had the courage to stand up, along with many other mayors, and say enough is enough. We have to move. We're here today because this community, Driving Park, like almost every community across the country, has suffered greatly due to the epidemic of gun violence. On average, 526 Ohioans are killed, Buckeyes are killed by gun violence every single year, just in homicides. Guns are the second leading cause of death for Ohio's kids, children, and teens. Nationally, we lose 100 people to gun violence every single day, and it's intolerable, yet we seem to accept it as normal. We seem to resign ourselves to the notion of inaction. For families who've been affected by gun violence, normal is a living nightmare. For families in Dayton who learned last year what it means to have a mass shooting rip through the community, normal is unacceptable. For families right here in this community whose losses don't make headlines in national news every day, but who feel the grief just as deeply, normal is an insult. It dismisses the dignity and pride of these communities. It dishonors the value of their lives. And Chris, Sharon, and Crystal, thank you for not just what you're doing in endorsing me, but much more importantly, for sharing your stories. I'm so deeply honored to be joined by real leaders of this movement. These women are driving grassroots action, mobilizing our communities, galvanizing the nation in a way that hadn't happened before. I'm often asked by the press, what makes you think I can get these things done now? Well, because of the people standing behind me, because of the grassroots movement that occurred and is occurring now. Folks, you know, there's a lot to be done. A lot to be done. But as I said, these women are driving the grassroots actions, mobilizing their communities and galvanizing the nation to action. I know a lot of times I get asked, plenty of people have tried to pass gun safety reforms, and they failed. What's different this time? Well, the answer is standing again behind me. And it's not just women demanding action. It's not just Brady. It's not just the organizations that are behind me. It's also the young people. I was there. I wasn't vice president any longer, but I was up in Washington when all those kids came up with their parents, many of their parents, from down in Florida, where that horrific shooting took place. I looked at the faces of these kids and their determination and the fear that congressmen had of having to meet with them and look them in the eye. You know, these kids were marching for their lives, straight out of high school, right through and up to the doors of Congress, demanding change. I promise you, it matters. The answer is the reason we're going to win is because of all of you behind me. This movement isn't being led from Washington. It's growing up from the ground in your communities, just like this one, all across America. It can't be bought or influenced by gun manufacturers. It can't be swayed by the NRA. And that's why the scariest people in America for the NRA are folks like Sharon and Chris, scores of volunteers like Crystal, who've had their lives devastated by gun violence, but who are turning their pain to purpose. We talked a while ago, Crystal, and we talked about how you asked me how I was handling my circumstance. And I said, you got to find purpose. You found a purpose. Both your children are looking down, man. I believe it. Because you have purpose. And you're helping other kids, other children, other sons and daughters. You know, I know how hard it is to lose a child. I know the grief is overwhelming. You feel like you're being sucked into a black hole in your chest with no way out. You feel like you're being just consumed. But finding purpose, at least I've found, and most people I speak to find, is the only thing that allows you to breathe again. You know, finding the work that gets you up every morning, motivates you because you know how much it matters. And I'm running for president to make sure we have the leadership in Washington who's going to have your back. And I mean it. Our national character will not abide standing by and doing nothing while thousands of lives are cut short by gun violence in this country. As president, I promise you I will act. You know, I've beaten the NRA before, twice. Passed meaningful gun safety legislation at a federal level. We can do it again. I'm incredibly proud of helping lead the fight to pass the Brady bill. You know, Jim was a friend of mine. Jim worked for my colleague, Bill Roth, who was a Republican, conservative Republican, but on civil rights, civil liberties, all those issues, women's rights, he was solid, very conservative guy. We served together for 3 decades. Never once was a harsh word among us, between us, or with our staffs. That's where I got to know Jim before he went nationally with the president. And, you know, creating this background system is an incredible change that's taken place. As was mentioned already, we got it done. We kept more than 3 million guns out of the hands of dangerous people. If I could halt for just a second here. I'm not opposed to the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is an absolute, though, like any other amendment. It's not absolute. If one of you in here yelled fire and someone gets hurt, you're going to be sued. It's not free speech. You're putting people in danger. You're putting people in danger. From the very beginning, the Second Amendment did not say anybody can own any kind of weapon. The idea of some of my friends and folks I encounter say the tree of liberty is water with the blood of patriots. They need an F-15 with Hellfire missiles if they're going to fight the government. An AR-15 is not going to do it. An AR-15 is not going to protect them. You got to be able to shoot straight or just spray everything. A shotgun will help you a lot better. My point is, even the members of the NRA, a majority, know that AR-15s and clips with 30, 40, 50, 100 rounds in it make no sense. So not only is the NRA out there, you're changing the ideas of the membership of the NRA. Significant whom are rational people. And I compliment you for it. As president, I'm not going to just get us to universal background checks, closing the gun show loophole, the online loophole. We're also going to close the Charleston loophole so that you can't have the time run out to allow you to get a gun. You all know how it works now. Most people don't know. The background check system, there's a thing called the NICS system. Supposedly, not supposedly, each of the states are supposed to take all those people who are disqualified from owning a gun, send their names and material to this national registry. And then when you go to purchase a weapon, at that gun shop, they check in and go to the NICS and say, can this person own a weapon or not? Well, the problem is not all of them have updated their records. And the idea that you can't wait a matter of minutes or a day to be able to own that gun is bizarre. The Charleston loophole is that loophole that said you got to do it within 24 hours. If it doesn't come back one way or another, that check, you automatically can purchase the gun. We're going to close that boyfriend loophole. When I wrote the Violence Against Women Act, I was able to get past legislation that said abusers, husbands are abusers, someone you have a child with is an abuser. They cannot own a firearm if they've been convicted of abusing you. But there's a thing called the boyfriend loophole that we've been trying to get past. If you have a boyfriend who you haven't had a child by, and he beats you all the time, he's been given a stay-away order, he can still own a weapon. Vast majority of women who are killed with a gun by their perpetrator. We've got to keep guns out of the hands of abusers. How in God's name can the president not understand that? We're going to get weapons of war off the street and out of our communities. As I said, the Second Amendment is now and has never been without limits. No one needs an AR-15 or 100 rounds in a magazine to go hunting or for self-defense. It's designed for no other purpose than to kill, and kill quickly and brutally. Think back to last August. Think back to a nation reeling from the horrors of the Latino community being specifically targeted by a gunman in El Paso. In less than 12 hours, later being hit again by the news from Dayton. Police were on the scene within 20 seconds in Dayton. Let's get this straight now. Within 20 seconds, they did their job. It took only 10 more seconds for them to take down the shooter. But because they're using an AR-15 style weapon, fitted with 100-round magazine opening fire, in just 30 seconds, he was still able to kill 9 people and injure 27. Let me say it again. Assault weapons and high-capacity magazines are designed for no purpose other than to kill quickly and as brutally as possible. No one needs them. Working with Senator Dianne Feinstein, we got the assault weapons ban passed and high-capacity magazines banned in this country for 10 years. Then we had that thing with hanging chads in Florida. We lost an election, and President Bush let it expire. It had to be renewed. Only way to get it passed the first time around. It passed at the time despite pressure from the NRA. My point is we can do this again. Anything less is an insult to the families across the nation that have been terrorized by gun violence. And on day one of my presidency, I'm going to send a bill to Congress revoking one of the worst special interest giveaways in history. We're going to end the civil liability protections granted to gun manufacturers. And by the way, think about that for a second. If I stood up here and said, by the way, we're going to make sure there's no civil liability for drug companies who put 9 billion opioid pills out on the market, you'd all say, that's a great thing, Joe. That makes sense, right? Well, we're not going to be able to sue tobacco companies for lying to us about the effects of their product. What are we doing? Right now, grieving families don't have the right to sue the companies that manufacture these guns, false advertising, and cause so much carnage. We don't give that protection, as I said, to the pharmaceutical companies, to tobacco companies, but to gun manufacturers. And over 150,000 people have been murdered in this country, not counting suicides, since 2005, since we passed that exemption. 6,405 of them right here in Ohio. Not one of their families can sue. I don't know if you use the term, but it's immoral. We have to end it. Folks, we can't stand by while this crisis continues to worsen. You can't just give up and say there's nothing to be done. There's plenty to be done. And now, Mr. Mayor and your city attorney, Zach Klein, you're fighting like hell to pass some sensible gun safety reform policy right here in Columbus, including passing a city ordinance that bans bump stocks. Here in Ohio, to really make a change, we need that kind of leadership at your state level. The tragedy in Dayton, after it, Governor DeWine and Donald Trump briefly made overtures about passing universal background checks and red flag laws like my son got passed as Attorney General in the state of Delaware before he died. That's what the mayors wanted. That's what advocates in the front lines want. But what then happened? The NRA moved into the Oval Office. Donald Trump didn't do a darn thing that he said he was going to do relative to gun safety. And all of a sudden, guns aren't part of the problem anymore. Folks, it matters who we elect. It matters what we stand for. So let's start getting rid of Donald Trump as president and the initiatives the NRA and the Oval Office are continuing to dictate, and replacing him with someone who will go after the NRA and gun manufacturers with the full might of their office. If I can make one more interjection here. Folks, you know, I met with some of the leading tech people in the world in the United States. You know, you can purchase, you can make a weapon, a gun, where only your biometrics can pull the trigger. You're the only one that can pull the trigger. If any of you today left your key in your automobile out in the parking lot, and a 14-year-old kid gets in the car, starts it up, and gets in an accident, you're liable, civilly liable. How does it violate anyone's Second Amendment right that if you pass a background check, you can purchase a gun, but only you can pull the trigger? Well, guess what? Months ago, they came up with certain pistols that could do that. The stores that were beginning to sell them, all of a sudden they got notice from the gun manufacturers. And all right, if you continue to sell them, we are going to out you. We're not going to support you. We're not going to sell to you. Guess what? They took them off the market. This is about gun sales. Sales. Money. Profit. That's what it's about. So as president, not only am I going to work on this, I'm going to try to rally the tech sector to make sure they rise up and do something that can, in fact, affect what happens. By the way, Sandy Hook wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened because Mom left all those guns out. A kid who couldn't pass a background check got them, went to school, and killed all those beautiful babies and some teachers. So look, we have to make sure that we hold the House, that is, we, the Democrats, hold the House and flip the Senate. We need to make sure we elect Democrats up and down the ballot because I think it's the only place we're going to find the courage to get things done. Not that every Democrat has voted the right way. We've got to fight the NRA. Support what a majority of their constituents think makes sense. Fight for our kids. Fight for a generation of young people who are terrified going to school. Again, the press that follows me knows that I've quoted from the National Psychiatric Association. Kids are most frightened. What's the thing on a scale of 1 to 5 they're most frightened about? Getting shot in school. It's a moral disgrace. Fight to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. Fight for communities like this one to make them secure. Look, I've looked at too many devastated family members, too many brave school shooting survivors in the eye, and I've made them all a simple promise, and I've made this promise, that I will do everything in my power. I will never give up this fight until we stop the carnage that is occurring as a consequence of the NRA and the gun manufacturers. And if you stand with me, we'll pass laws to ban killer assault weapons, hold gun makers liable. We can do this. And the reason we can is because of the moms standing behind me. Thank you. Let's go talk. Come on.